What is going on, y'all? I am KMBest. He is Lambie Series. I am not going to try to point at him. I am very happy with what he has accomplished in terms of pointing. We've really grown. We are 8 cubes, and we are here to talk about the 8 most important topics in Marvel Snap, starting with the Snowguard nerf, or buff, or whatever. A lot of people, I personally had the reaction to the Snowguard change of increasing the cost of the Bear and the Hawk as, oh, well, if they wanted to make it playable outside of Loki, why didn't they leave it good? How does this help make it playable outside of Loki? Doesn't this make it more just reliant on being a card that puts cards into your hand? And I will say, I think Lambie here is probably the person who's played the most non-Loki Snowguard in probably the entire world. So I want to throw this one over to you, Lambie. What do you think about new Snowguard, how it works, and why they made the decision that they did, and if their logic makes sense?
All right, what's up, guys? So yes, I did play a lot of Snowguard. I love the card, Snowguard and Legion combinations. So with the latest nerf, to me it's a strict nerf, right? Because like the cost of the Auroras are like more expensive now. So I think the problem now is that, as you mentioned, it used to see a lot of play in Loki decks, but now with the nerf, it's probably only going to see play in Loki decks, and I don't think that is the direction they want to go for, because like making the Auroras cost more expensive just means that you never really get to play them, and they are really just like a hand size increaser for Loki right now, which is a very relevant use case, which is why I haven't cut Snowguard from my Loki decks, because it's very relevant. But outside of Loki, I mean, I've heard funny arguments like, oh, it's now a surfer card. I'm just like, probably not.
Probably not, but
Probably
hey,
not.
sure, you could, yeah.
Yeah. But like, I find it very difficult to play this card outside of Loki right now, because you don't play Quinjet outside of Loki, and like these cards costing 3 energy and then there's no Quinjet. Like playing the Auroras for 3 costs kind of sucks, not gonna lie. So I am a bit concerned. I don't think this is the direction that they really wanted to go with Snowguard. I think that the play rate of the card will drop significantly outside of Loki decks. A bit concerned because the card just got recently buffed to actual like relevantness, right? And now it's gonna be like a bit obsolete again.
It's weird because it's like the same nerf they did to Collector.
Mm-hmm.
Like they do this thing when they do nerfs, they chop the bottom off the card. Does that make sense? They
Yes.
like they make it so the worst case scenario is worse, but the best case scenario mostly stays the same. So they like chop the bottom off. And they did that with Collector and they did that with Snowguard, and now they're only good enough to run in a deck where you're best case scenarioing them. You can't run them when you're not best case scenarioing them anymore. And it just sort of feels like I get why they balance like that. I just don't know if they need to do it to every card. Next up, the thing people mostly watch our channels for is the top decks in Marvel Snap. And right now we are in a pretty unique meta because we are just awaiting the rise of Elsa Bloodstone. We are still adjusting to the power of Mobius M Mobius. And the top decks are starting to look very diverse, actually, because with Mobius coming out, mid-range decks can sort of breathe again. They can not immediately lose to every Loki who ever existed. You are able to actually play games as long as you have Mobius in your deck. It does sort of make me wonder why they had Mobius as the last card in the Loki release. Like, I almost wonder how much they knew about this. But Lambie, to you, what are the best decks in Marvel Snap right now?
So I want to talk about the best decks in the game right now in like a sort of mini pocket meta thing, which is like it's just this week, because I do believe as well that Elsa coming out will change a lot of things. But like, okay, so for this week, what I've tested, the simple man's way of doing it, like if you don't really want to care too much about what's going on, you could go Shuri Sauron because it's completely unaffected by anything. The list is pretty much solved with that one Enchantress / Doom slot, could be anything. I've even played Mobius in this deck just to put a bit more hate on my opponents, right? Like if it doesn't get Sauron or anything. So that's one direction you can go for. Another option is you can play Silk. Silk is a very strong deck right now, still regardless. Whether you want to go the wave direction, I think you just play Mobius in the deck and you sort of like semi-counter Loki as well. Just a solid like early points deck, which can fit in Alioth, Doom, stuff like that. And another thing that I've also been playing kind of interesting. Loki hasn't died, by the way. Loki hasn't died. Like,
No.
yeah,
No.
Loki hasn't died. So, I mean, the Snowguard
Yeah.
nerf did happen, but like, if you're using Snowguard as just to make your hand big to Loki, it's the same thing. And if you get hit by a Mobius, you retreat. If you don't get hit by a Mobius, you snap them and then you play Loki. So, like, it's the same. I think these 3 decks are viable for this week. And I don't know about you, KM. Have you tried Brute Apps? People have been saying that Brute Apps has been decent right now.
Brood Abs is a deck that I'm actually really interested in because I know that Young Wave hit #1 using mostly Brood Abs before these changes. And I know that it was like a pretty okay deck generally. It's the kind of deck that makes me, like, when I think about the metagame, it feels like it should be the strongest deck because if you have the Mobius decks pushing on the Loki decks, it should be better at points than the move deck. We already figured that out, right?
Yes.
So Brood Abs is something that I'm definitely interested in. It's a very, if that deck ever becomes popular, it's going to be a lot like the Loki meta where it's just like, I see a mirror. Did they do the thing? And so hopefully Elsa does do a lot to change that. Although I will note that Brood Abs is a surprising, although not perhaps entirely surprising, potential home for Elsa Bloodstone, given how quickly it fills the board out. There is some of that in the back of my mind as well.
Oh, I do just want to add also that Shuri Kitty is so dead.
Oh God,
Kitty is not dead. Kitty's not dead at
time.
all. Kitty's not dead, but Shuri Kitty, damn, it's so sad,
dude.
man.
Every time we finally get that deck to work again, they just like obliterate it. They kill it every time. It's so sad. We found that deck for the first time like right before the original Kitty nerf. And like a week before, something like that. And then it finally cycles around to being good after Loki blows out the meta for like 2 or 3 days and they kill it again.
It died again, yeah.
Oh man. Now we've danced around the topic of Elsa Bloodstone. Elsa Bloodstone, her main draw, of course, is her text that says when you play a card to fill up a lane, that card gets +3 power. She's a 2-cost card, although she does have to be on the board for a full turn before her effect activates. It's not like you can go Elsa Kitty on a full lane and get that +3 power on the Kitty, per some of Glenn Jones's responses on Twitter and on Discord. What do you see Elsa doing? Because the obvious thing that I think most people see her doing is, Kitty Pride, right? But if you're a deck that's going to fill up all the lanes, isn't she just like a 2, 7, or 8? Like, if you're going to do that anyway, isn't she just really good at numbers? And so do you think there are applications for her in, say, Brood Abs, where it's just like, yeah, this is a 2/9 or whatever. This is just going to be an extremely large unit. And that's another way for us to get more points into lanes that are otherwise pretty capped in terms of total points, because a lot of the ways to attack Brood Abs are just win the lane where one of their things is invested because they are limited in terms of how tall they can go, suddenly a little less limited. So where are you at for Elsa Bloodstone? Are you thinking Kitty or are you thinking more expansive?
So firstly, I'm super excited for Elsa Bloodstone. I think this kind of card is like one of my favorite kinds of like cards in Marvel Snap. Like it scales the more you play like stuff, right? So firstly, the obvious one is Kitty. Yes, I think Kitty sort of died for the sins of what Elsa would commit, like if it didn't get nerfed. So I think Kitty is one of the things that I'm definitely gonna explore, like in a bounce deck. I didn't mention this in top decks earlier because I've been playing a lot of bounce recently. It's not a top deck. It's really just a tier 2 deck that I like to play. But like the next week, bounce is probably gonna be tier 1 because of the way it abuses Kitty, the way it abuses one lesser known card, Mysterio. If you go Bast on Mysterio, and I think this is how it works. You play Mysterio because it's 3 cards being played, right? And you fill up the lanes, you like get +3 on each one, which is crazy because that's like 2/6, 2/6, 2/6, I think. That's how I think
it should work. Yeah, that does sound like it would work. Yes,
crazy.
If they're
it's
the
like
last card.
5 energy, 18 power total, or something like that.
But it does have that issue though, because like Elsa Bloodstone needs to be on the board.
Correct.
Right,
correct.
and you can't just like final turn. I'm gonna play my beasted Elsa Bloodstone out. It has to be on the board already.
Yeah, that's one of the setup things that might make it a bit less good, but still probably very good. Like it's not just completely broke back where you drop Elsa on the final turn as well. So I think that's the bounce direction that I'm looking at. The Brood Apps version thing that you mentioned earlier, I'm quite like I didn't think about it, but I think it's quite interesting because Brood Depths fills up in a way whereby, like you said, it's just super wide and like 15, 16 points. Then it also lets you get like that +6 for cheap, that kind of thing, which is a lot, right? +6 for like 2 costs, 1 cost, 3 costs. I don't know. It's cheap.
Pretty good.
So like you can play a Surfer into the Brood lane and then you buff everything and the Surfer gets +3. So it's a 2/5 Surfer, 3/5 Surfer. It's a lot, right? So very exciting card. I'm very excited to see what can happen next week.
Let's move on to from exciting cards to deeply unexciting ones. The Ass Man, Galactus. Is he just bad now? I haven't seen him, and I think that's the main one of the things I really like about OTAs is even if they don't necessarily change how good a card is, they change whether people want to play the card. And so when Galactus gets a 2-power nerf, everyone's just like, forget about that, man, for at least a week. And so this is a good week when people do that. Is he actually dead though? Because I don't really know. I honestly kind of think he's probably still reasonable. What his deck does is still fairly powerful.
I think you can still play the card. I have not tested it, but I want to because I had an idea like literally before this, which is like I think you can still play it in ramp as an option because Galactus into Alioth things is just still insta win, right? So it's just there as an option, but it's not a reliable thing anymore. You just have it there to scare people, put the fear of God in people. Because like if you go wave into Galactus, there's still a very decent chance they still have to 50-50 the correct lane to play into Galactus. Also, if you have initiative, it doesn't matter. It still blows up, right? So one thing that is very big that someone pointed out to me was that now you can play Doctor Doom when they wave and it blocks Galactus. Last time you can't do that.
That is true.
It's huge,
that is
right?
A big deal. Yeah.
So
because
it's like
that's an arrow level. Yeah, that's arrow level ubiquitous. That's everywhere, and now every deck, as long as they have priority. Yeah.
So Galactus being toned down a bit, I guess, is good. I do think 6/5 is a bit harsh though. I was like fine with 6/6, but like, I mean, the OTA definitely did impact people's perception of the card. For the last like 24 hours, I have seen grand total of 0 Galactus in my games. So I think it's really doing its work.
Thank you, Glenn. Now to Galactus's running mate, Alioth. Alioth has been the subject of probably more discourse than most cards in Marvel Snap ever will be. I feel as though Alioth is actually a totally fair card when you consider the kind of card archetype they were trying to make. They were trying to make a card like Old Arrow, trying to make a card like Old Leader that rewarded you for being ahead, for playing for priority, and they wanted to make it weaker than either Old Arrow or Old Leader. And I think they mostly accomplished that goal, right? Outside of Galactus, that is an accurate description of Alioth. It is a weaker version of Old Arrow and Old Leader and basically all the tempo decks that play it. But I think that there might not be much appetite among the player base for decks like that existing. And that is the thing that really sticks out to me, where it's like, oh, you know, you did accomplish the goal, but I'm not sure it was a goal worth accomplishing in terms of there are people who don't even know what priority is. And if you don't know what priority is, you can't really play against Alioth. You can't really play around Alioth. And I think one of the things that makes Alioth more palatable to people like you and me is we are aware that an Alioth could happen and we play to beat an Alioth. And then we leave when we're dead to Alioth against the deck that is probably running Alioth, and that requires a decent amount of investment and metagame knowledge and understanding of what your opponent is setting up and knowledge of whether you can beat the card. And I wonder if Alioth might be, like, technically just a little bit of a harder card for someone to play around if they are not fully caught up on that kind of thing. What do you think about that?
Actually, I think like you really just hit the nail on the head. Like I don't really have much to add except okay, I'm just gonna like further supplement your point first, which is that
let's go.
Which is that I really feel that Alioth is a card that if you are sort of semi-invested into this game, you won't find it difficult to beat because it's just playing for initiative, right? Like if you know how to play for initiative, it's not that difficult to beat. Plus, you can just leave if you don't have initiative. I do think the card itself is not unfair. to be completely frank, it's not an unfair card. It's a good 6-cost card. Like, Doctor Doom is a good 6-cost card. Like, if they make it any worse, it would probably be a bad 6-cost card, and I don't think they want to turn it into a bad 6-cost card. So I feel like
I think
Alioth, the way it is right now, is completely fair. And you just really need to have a bit of an understanding of like how to play for initiative. And I think that's it.
I think Doctor Doom is a great 6-cost card.
Okay.
I think Alioth is honestly
worse,
a
right?
little bit worse than Doctor
Yes.
Doom, right?
It is,
Like
it is.
I think Doctor Doom is a great 6-cost
Yeah.
card, and Alioth is the next best probably, but Doctor Doom is like A1.
It's like you
he's
will
the
choose
guy.
to play Doom first, then consider to play Alioth in your deck, right? Like for most scenarios.
Usually, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the order it tends to go for me. Speaking of Alioth, I know Twitter discourse, but I know it was focused on, okay, they nerfed the Collector, they nerfed Snowguard, they nerfed Galactus, they didn't nerf Loki, they didn't nerf Alioth. Is this evidence of forcing you to buy the new card? Is this evidence of a specific balanced decision forcing you to buy the new card? And so my thought process on it is that it's not necessarily evidence of that, but I think that we should likely expect more of this in this context, because I'll tell you why. Not necessarily because they want you to buy the new card, but because they designed the new card to do a specific thing, right? They were like, all right, we need to make a Leader Arrow type card that isn't as bad as Leader Arrow. And so they made Alioth, right? And then there's one card that already existed that makes Alioth more like Old Leader and Old Arrow, this deterministic lockout, and that's Galactus. So they fixed Galactus instead of Alioth, right? And I think that's actually, I might get killed for this, but I think that's actually the correct way to do it. I would rather they attempt to do those things and then make other things fit around them. The Loki one I find a little bit more confusing, personally, because that one actually, I feel like if you just made him, like, just do a little bit to him, right? Like, you don't have to do insane stuff to him. Make him a 3/4. Like, just do something to him instead of to Snowguard, instead of to Collector. Collector is a card that, like, it could have been run in other decks, and now it absolutely cannot be, because the way they balance is by taking the bottom off. And I just hate seeing the bottom taken off cards that don't necessarily need to have the bottom taken off of them, when you could just take a little off the top of something like Loki. Like, with Alioth, I think I get it, because they were attempting to create a certain playstyle of deck that wasn't as common anymore. And the one situation where that playstyle became oppressive was Galactus. Fine. That makes sense to me. But yeah, I do sort of wonder if we're going to see more stuff like this in the future. Does worry me. What do you think?
They kind of did it preemptively with Kitty, right? Before
Yeah.
Elsa.
Yeah.
The Kitty one to me is okay as well, because Kitty like has really been massively played in like everything. So I think it's okay. The Alioth and Galactus one, my personal opinion is like, I never even thought Galactus needed to be nerfed, but my opinion, this opinion of mine is heavily like, people don't like this opinion. I think Galactus was actually fine, but like anyway, the Loki one, I agree 100% with you, which is that like they just need to take a little bit off Loki, right? Because now that they didn't take a little bit off Loki, they took a lot off Snowguard, they took everything off Collector, and like, yeah, I don't think it's the way it should be per se. Like, Loki just going to 3/3 is fine. It will be played. Loki will be played. Just that it's a lot more fair, right? Putting a 3/5 body on board that still buffs the Collector by like +6 is crazy. So I think just taking a little bit off the Loki would have been enough. That's my opinion.
I do want to address the Galactus thing you're talking about, because I think you're absolutely 100% wrong. Because I think the Galactus stuff is not a concession to necessarily power level. Like, the power level on the decks is good, but what it is a concession to feel. Like, they've made it very clear that they do not want deterministic end games in Marvel Snap. They got rid of Arrow. They got rid of Leader. And so when they made Alioth, the whole thought process is it's bad old Arrow. It's bad old Leader, right? There's no deterministic end games here. But the one card that makes it so one lane getting blown up is deterministic is Galactus. And that's why they had to take the top off of that. They just hate that existing. They hate it.
Okay.
Like, I think that that's my read, where it's just like they do not like when there is a situation where the game is 100% over, 100% over, and there's nothing you can do about it. Even old Galactus, it was like, all right, well, they have priority. Let me rogue their null or whatever. There's stuff there. There's nothing with Alioth. Zero. And I think that is the major thing that made Galactus a problem here, is just if that is not a play style they want to promote. They like specifically, I think, made Alioth thinking that it would not be promoting that play style, but it still would allow those kind of priority decks to exist. And Galactus is the one glaring obvious case where it does promote that play style. Speaking of Loki, how's that guy doing? Loki is, in my opinion, I mean, it's still good. Like, people, it's still quite solid. People seem to think that Mobius is like a counter to Loki, and it's like, kind of, but not really enough a lot of the time, where it's like, oh man, if you don't have it, but B, like, sometimes it's just like, oh, well, they're just too big anyway, right? Like, sometimes it's just not even going to be enough, even if you play the Mobius and nothing happens about it. I have been a little surprised with the moves away from Loki. I know you still think it's a top deck. Walk me through what your list looks like right now and why you've made those choices.
Okay, so honestly, when it comes to Loki, I really think it's still the top deck because firstly, like you said, if they don't have the Mobius, it's the same thing, right? And I've realized that even if they have the Mobius, if I have Collector into Loki, the Mobius doesn't really matter because I just go +6 on the Collector and I get cards, right? Like I just get cards and it's +6 on a 2 energy body, so it's a lot. So it rarely matters. My current list is more close to yours right now with Sentinel. I actually realized.
Are you finally off Dino?
Yeah, I'm off
Did we do
Dino
it?
now. Actually, yeah, I'm off
We
Dino
did
right
it.
now. Yeah, no. So I thought
yeah.
Dino would make the. I thought Dino would make the matchup post Mobius meta better, but I realized I just decided to go even more all in on Loki, whereby like if I don't have Loki, I retreat. If I have Loki Collector, I snap. And then it turned out to be a little bit better for me. So Sentinel was epic because Sentinel really helps maintain the cards in hand thing. Which is super, super important. I also dumped Mobius into my own like Loki deck, just because it didn't really do much negativity for me in the list since I'm all in on Loki anyway right now. So the deck is still relatively strong. Just you gotta notice when you can't get greedy anymore. Like if you know they are a Mobius deck, right? You don't do the Loki turn 4, maybe you just Loki turn 3. Get your discounts and then play everything before they drop the Mobius, because people tend to like to greet the Loki, but now you can't really do it if you know they are a Mobius deck. So, things like that, just identify different like play patterns that need to change a bit. And I think Loki is still relatively top tier. Definitely took a hit, cannot deny it's a bit worse now, but I don't feel myself being at a disadvantage even if I know they have Mobius.
I feel like it's just a good deck now. It has fallen from being like the only playable thing in high elo to it's pretty good. Hey, it's solid. It's solid deck. It's solid good deck. Finally, Mobius M Mobius has been maybe the most quietly impactful card we've ever had released, just showing up and changing everything with his unique power. I feel that the metagame has evolved in some unexpected directions with Mobius. Like a lot more weird mid-range stuff that still uses cost reduction is just playing Mobius just to do it. And I feel like one dynamic that I've identified that I don't particularly like is the, did they draw the Mobius dynamic? It feels like there's a lot of that happening right now, and I am not particularly a fan of the did they draw the Mobius dynamic. Do you think that dynamic is going to be a one that we're going to have to live with long term, or do you think decks like, Brood Abs or Kitty Bloodstone will be able to get us to a place where it's no longer about whether or not you drew your counter card to what your opponent is doing?
Actually, on the contrary, right now, based on my personal play experience in the last few days, because of Loki's actual decline in popularity, not my personal decline in popularity, but like the generic decline in popularity.
Relative, yeah.
Yeah, relative decline in popularity. Actually, this whole draw the Mobius and win, don't draw the Mobius and lose thing is a lot less relevant, I feel, because like it's really just it's really just the kitty deck, because the wave decks that like sort of are a bit hurt because of Mobius I don't think it's actually that bad because like if they wave you on 5, you can still at least play like one big card on the final turn. So even without Mobius, so
Right.
I don't think
But
it's
it's like a
that bad.
free win if you Mobius them.
It's
Like
not
they just
really
kind of
that
die.
free as well. Okay, yeah, they can't play a Doom on the final turn, but like it really depends on the
Like,
it depends on the matchup as well. But like I don't think it's that bad because like it's not like Loki infested right now. Like Loki is
right.
the only matchup to me that I feel like if you have the Mobius, it's a lot better. If you don't have the Mobius, you just die.
Yes.
Right? So that one is bad. But like yeah. So Mobius I feel opens up like I mentioned way earlier in this video, like the whole Silk deck. Like the Silk deck was
Yeah.
so difficult
Dead.
to play in the face of Loki because Loki will Loki you and steal all your low cost, high power stuff. But now that if you have the Mobius, you can play like the fairer game and you kind of win the fairer game as the Silk deck because your deck is just more stats, like raw stats. So I do like
Unless they
what.
collector Loki you.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, no, that one you just die no matter what they do. Like Collector
Yeah.
Loki is just the nuts versus everything.
Yeah, you just
But
die.
like, yeah, so I like what Mobius is doing actually. And one thing, the funny thing you mentioned, Mobius is just like quietly OP. It's really quietly OP because this card is so unflashy and so boring. It's
Yes.
literally
It's
just like
so boring.
Owen, like literally Owen Wilson just sits on the field like that, and
Yeah.
then like he doesn't do anything. And he also does a lot of things, right? There's no flashy animations, no
Yeah.
like Neo or no Thanos Stone stuff. So like
No.
it looks not fantastic, but it's actually very impactful. So, you know,
Can I get your best Owen Wilson? Wow.
I have no idea how to do that, man. Okay, you do it.
Okay,
You do it.
so I'll do one. Okay.
Okay.
Wow. Wow.
Wow. Okay,
Okay,
I've never
that's actually
done that
we're gonna
before.
tell me. That's a little
Alright.
treat for everyone who watched the whole video. That's
I feel like I know what you're
welcome.
talking about, but I don't remember. So I just
I'm
did it
not
based
good
on
at
what you
it.
did.
So you just I'm not good at it. So I feel like you did an impression of my impression. We're gonna get Lambie to watch like an Owen Wilson going
Yes.
wow compilation at some point. Thank you so much for watching this Owen Wilson wow compilation. We have been 8 cubes. We will see you in the next one.
Bye-bye.